Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Roscoe's recap, and this viewing party was for RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 10 episode 10, and the guests this week were Cynthia Lee Fontaine and Lydia B. Collins. So today we're going to be talking about Cynthia Lee Fontaine exposes potential production secrets about All-Stars 10, Lydia B. Collins reveals why she temporarily, quote, ghosted the season 17 cast, including Corey King, and Cynthia implies that she confronted Mistress Isabel Brooks after filming about her behaviour. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. They started off with Naysha asking if the queens knew which queens had made it through to the semi-finals. Lydia said yes because they all saw each other backstage, presumably because the queens entered on the main stage, and in Untucked we've seen that the queens have to line up for the runway backstage, so presumably it's the same for the entrances on the runway as well. Cynthia also joked that she had no idea who was going to be on, but then she winked, so Naysha said they all clearly knew. Naysha then asked, were there any queens that they were surprised to see in the semis, or was there a queen who they thought would be in the semis but wasn't? Cynthia said she was surprised that Tina Burner was not in the semis because she did really well in her bracket, and her design challenge look was one of the best ever apart from Utica. Lydia said she was surprised to see Cynthia in the semis, and Cynthia joked that everyone, including the staff, were also surprised too, and she said, quote, oh, she has talent, she passed, wow, and everyone laughed. Caramel then asked, did Acid Betty follow through with what she said about designing looks for Cynthia for the semis, and did Corey King help Lydia to prepare for the season? Lydia explained that when the semis were filmed, she was already touring, so she didn't have much time, which meant she outsourced pretty much everything, but Corey did help. Lydia also added that this is still her, but not the her that you're used to seeing, presumably because she had to outsource so much stuff this time. Cynthia said that Acid helped her with things like jokes and comedy, however time was a bit limited, so they didn't have time to develop looks and things like that, but Acid was guiding Cynthia through everything and she was present. They moved on, and Naysha mentioned that Lydia had just come off season 17 when she was offered All-Stars 10, and we know from interviews that Lydia has done that she only had around 5 days to prepare for the season. So Naysha asked, was it an immediate yes for her to go back to All-Stars, or did she have to think about it? Lydia joked that RuPaul called her personally on the phone and told her that there were no eliminations, which is why she said yes. However, Lydia said that they did not know that there would be eliminations at the semis, so that really did gag her. But she said it was an immediate yes for her to go back to All-Stars because she thought it would be funny. They moved on to Snatch Game, which was the challenge for this week, and they asked the queens how they came up with their characters, and did they have backup options. Cynthia said she doesn't look like anybody, so she decided to do a fictional character like Dracula, and it had to be someone registered so production wouldn't have to pay lots of money. But one thing that people may not know is that years ago, Cynthia was on the list of rumoured contestants for season 2 and 3 of the show Dragula. The reason was because Cynthia was part of a show in Austin, Texas, and one of the other queens at the show was a finalist on season 1 of Dragula. Also, Cynthia has known the Boulet brothers, who are the hosts of Dragula, for many years, and that's why she was on the rumoured cast list. So Cynthia explained that she is dark and she likes horror movies, which is why she ultimately decided to do Dracula for Snatch Game. Cynthia shared that her backup option was Frankie Grande, which everyone said would have been really good. Cynthia explained that she called Frankie and asked him if it would be okay for her to impersonate him, and he said yes. However, Cynthia said she doesn't have Frankie's abs, so Frankie said she should ask Jimbo and get one of those crazy latex suits. But ultimately, Cynthia decided to go with Dracula because she felt more comfortable doing it. They then watched Snatch Game and talked about each person's performance, but Naysha quickly mentioned the moment where RuPaul said that Raven won and gave her a crown, which Naysha said was symbolism, and she said, quote, "If you know, you know." Just to explain in case you don't know, many people took this moment of Ru crowning Raven as being a reference to the fact that on Raven's original season, which was season 2, the winner was Tyra Sanchez. However, after Tyra won, a lot of people started saying that Raven was robbed and that she should have won instead of Tyra. Also, since season 2, Tyra has become very controversial and has done and said a lot of things which have caused a huge amount of backlash against her. For many years, this has led to people campaigning for RuPaul to strip Tyra of her crown and give it to Raven instead, which is why people think that this moment that happened during Snatch Game was symbolism. If you are interested in hearing more about Tyra Sanchez's many dramas and controversies, I did do an entire video going through all of these things that led to her eventual downfall, and I'll link to that video in the description. Back to Roscoe's, and Naysha asked if Snatch Game was longer than what we saw, and Lydia said yes. Cynthia shared that on season 9, they filmed Snatch Game for 3 hours, but now the show knows what they're doing, so they only filmed Snatch Game for 1 hour. So in this episode, we saw 3 questions that RuPaul asked the contestants, but in reality, Ru asked between 5 to 7 questions in 1 hour. So because it's only 1 hour, it's a bit hard to develop your character because Ru always wants to keep moving on to the next question. Naysha asked if the edit of Snatch Game that we saw in this episode was accurate. Lydia said she thinks that she actually did horribly, and what they showed of her was the quote best of. Lydia also said she doesn't remember anything that happened during Snatch Game and it's all a blur. They went through each queen's performance and Cynthia said it's the quote magic of editing and production. She went on to say that respectfully, she loves all of her sisters, but compared to when they filmed season 9's Snatch Game, she found it quote a little boring. All of the parts that were put together by the editors make sense now, but in the moment when they're filming, it's only RuPaul laughing and maybe some of the production staff. Although Cynthia said Ru is the only person who's allowed to laugh because, quote, the sound system is going to collect that laughing because, of course, RuPaul is the host and the owner of Drag Race, so she's the one that decides to laugh or not. Cynthia also said a lot of the queens were really nervous about filming Snatch Game, and Lydia agreed and said Snatch Game is a quote living nightmare and it's horrifying. But Cynthia said she just had fun and she doesn't give an F because she's like the Latina version of Tammy Brown. They then moved on to Mistress's Snatch Game performance as Natalie Nunn from Bad Girls Club. Caramel said that she's a fan of Bad Girls Club, and Mistress was hitting the Natalie quotes, but she just wasn't funny and she was just acting like herself. Naysha said it's funny first and impersonation second, and Ru doesn't really care if you're doing an impersonation or whether she actually knows who the person is, it's just about being funny. But she said Mistress's performance was, quote, cringe a little bit. Cynthia then said, quote, a little? Cynthia then said that on set, during filming, RuPaul only laughed at Mistress's answer to the first question, but after that, Ru didn't laugh at any of her other answers. Cynthia continued that on set, apart from the obvious people like Ginger and Georges, one of the standouts for her was Bosco. Apparently, Bosco was really funny and was trying to build a relationship with RuPaul, but as Cynthia said, they only filmed for 1 hour, so it's very quick. And you saw that in the second question, Bosco was trying to maintain a relationship with RuPaul in character, but RuPaul just moved on to the next person. Naysha asked, when RuPaul doesn't laugh at your answers, does it kill the mood and make it difficult to come back from that? Both Lydia and Cynthia said yes, and Cynthia said, for example, when she made the joke about the ring and RuPaul didn't laugh, but then just looked at Raven, it was a bit like on season 9 when Cynthia did Sofia Vergara for Snatch Game, and in one of the responses, Ru asked the guest judge, which was Candice Kane, what Cynthia had said, and this made Cynthia think, quote, "Oh, here we go, we're going down the hill." Lydia said it's even worse when Ru asks you to repeat the answer, and she didn't laugh at it the first time, and then she also doesn't laugh at it the second time. They talked more about the judges' critiques for Snatch Game, and Cynthia said what happens is, right after they film Snatch Game, not even an hour afterwards, they edit the footage and show it to the panel of judges, and that version of the edit is what the judges use to form their critiques. Lydia asked how Cynthia knows that, and Cynthia said this is not her first rodeo, and people laughed. Naysha asked, do they think the judges watch the full 1 hour version of the footage, or do they think they show them the edited down version that we see in the episode? Lydia said she thinks that surely they must watch the whole thing so they can decide what was funny. Batty Davis then joked that she doesn't think that Michelle Visage has the patience to sit there and watch for an hour. And Cynthia joked that she doesn't think that Sarah Michelle Gellar is going to watch 3 hours of Snatch Game because she's a superstar, so she thinks they must show them the edited version. Naysha agreed and smiled and then said she thinks they must show them the edited version because, quote, you want them to judge the way you want them to judge, presumably implying that the edit is changed depending on who production wants to push forward. They moved on to the runway for this week, and the category was Tear a Me Suit, so a suit which tears off to reveal something else. Cynthia shared that RuPaul was talking about Aja and Georges' outfits design for about 10 minutes. And in fact, the same designer named Jeffrey Kelly made the outfits for Aja, Georges and also Diabetti. So the same designer actually had 3 different looks on this runway. Cynthia also shared some interesting tea about this runway, which was the original prompt the queens were given in a letter from production said that it had to be a 3-part reveal, so they must have then later changed it. But Cynthia said that she followed the rules for the outfit. Lydia was surprised and said she doesn't remember getting that prompt, but later they said it does make sense because actually several of the queens did have a 3-part reveal, so they must have changed the runway category at some point. There was also another interesting tidbit, which was, when they were talking about Ginger's reveal, Naysha said you could see Ginger had her arm behind her for the reveal right from the beginning, which none of the other queens did, so it kind of ruined the illusion. Lydia said that apparently Ginger's reveal was sutured at the back and had loops in it, but the loops were really hard to find, so that's why Ginger had to have her hand behind her back so she knew where they were. They also talked about Cynthia's outfit and the issue that she had during the reveal. Caramel said that we know they do the runways twice, so did Cynthia do the reveal flawlessly the second time? But Cynthia said for this runway they actually only did it 1 time. She joked that they had to get it done quickly because RuPaul had to go to the bathroom because, quote, the pamper was full of pee, and everyone laughed. Naysha then joked that Cynthia said she was never going to go back to the show and she's going to say whatever she wants. But this was clearly just a joke. Naysha then asked Cynthia whether she had an opportunity to practice walking in her outfit before, but Cynthia said the outfit only arrived a day before she had to go to LA to film. Cynthia explained that the full tea is that it was hard for her to find designers in the US to help her because on her original seasons, she was portrayed as a comedy kooky queen, and even if she had the money and was a professional person and was on time, it's still a challenge to find designers, which is not an excuse, but it was a challenge. So she ended up finding Latinx designers from Mexico and Venezuela, and she was proud to say that her entire package was made by members of the Latinx community because that was really important to her, and everyone clapped and cheered. Naysha agreed and said, for any designers who don't want to work with queens who are not fan favourites or who are not fashion queens, quote, shame on you, because you should remember that this is overall queer representation and we want everyone to be represented fairly. They moved on to the judges' critiques, and Naysha said some of the critiques made her think, quote, shut the F up. And she mentioned when Carson Kressley said that Lydia needed to steam her dress. Naysha said the dress was clearly tucked up inside her suit, and they have to go from the workroom to the stage, and then they have to wait around until they do the runway, so of course the dress was going to be crinkled. Lydia said the tea is that it was not only steamed once, but she actually steamed it twice. But she does admit that she could have chosen a different fabric that doesn't crinkle as much. However, the others on stage said shut up and don't give Carson the benefit of the doubt because they said Lydia looked amazing. Cynthia then said she had something to say about the judges' critiques. She was presumably referring to the moment when Carson said that Ginger's hat was not big enough, and Ginger said, quote, well, the hat looked bigger on Temu, and the judges all laughed about it. Cynthia basically said, if you remember back to Drag Race UK Season 2, Joe Black said that her outfit was from H&M, and RuPaul was really angry about it and went on a rant that she doesn't want to see H&M and off-the-rack things on the runway.
H&M. Don't waste my time. I don't want to see any f***ing H&M.
But Cynthia said, in the UK, they're not allowed to joke about H&M, but, quote, here in America, we can joke about Temu. And people gasped a bit, and Caramel said, quote, clock it. So, presumably Cynthia was calling out Ru for clocking Joe Black for wearing H&M, but Ru didn't clock Ginger for wearing Temu. But it's unclear whether the Temu thing was a joke or not, and whether Cynthia was actually joking about this or not. They then asked Cynthia if she agreed with the judges' critiques that her Snatch Game was not very good. Cynthia said the show has been going for 17 years now, and we've seen many winners doing, quote, irreverent comedy, which is what Cynthia also likes doing. So when Cynthia sees other queens winning Snatch Game or improv challenges doing this style of comedy, but Cynthia gets criticised when she does it, she said, quote, I have so many questions. She continued saying, don't get her wrong, she loves production and RuPaul, but, quote, I did the most in bracket number 3 and then now, and then all of a sudden Snatch Game was terrible for her. Cynthia then joked that we need to study this at Harvard, and presumably Cynthia was maybe implying that she felt like the judging was a bit inconsistent. They then got to the moment when Cynthia and Mistress were in the bottom 2, and Mistress won the lip sync, so Cynthia got eliminated, and everyone clapped and cheered for Cynthia. Cynthia said she was very thankful for the opportunity to come back to All Stars, and she thanked everyone for all of the love and support they have given her. They moved on to the Q&A, and one of the VIP questions was, how long was it between filming the brackets and then filming the semi-finals? Because a lot of the queens look really different in their confessionals. Lydia said there was, quote, a minute between filming the two parts, but she couldn't remember. Cynthia then said it was July 26th when they filmed her bracket. Everyone laughed, and the hosts said that the queens never usually give actual dates, but they lived for it. Cynthia went on to say that they filmed bracket 3 in July 2024, and then the semi-finals were filmed in April 2025. So it was about 8 months between filming, which is why some of the queens look so different. And the audience gasped a bit, presumably because Cynthia was spilling some production tea that the queens usually don't share. The others asked why there was such a long gap between filming, and Cynthia said this was the first time they had done this type of format, but the show didn't realise that a lot of the queens were, quote, into medications for losing weight, and she had previously mentioned Ozempic and things like that. According to Cynthia, production sent an email to the queens saying that they had to wear the same confessional outfits that they had worn during the first round of filming in July 2024. But the queens said no because a lot of them had lost weight. Cynthia even said that she lost 28 pounds between filming, but it was not Ozempic. However, she added that that's no shade to anyone who does use medication. But that's why the queens looked so different in their confessionals, and according to Cynthia, because of that, in the future, the show is going to try and film everything within 2 months, presumably to avoid this kind of situation happening again. Naysha said you have to remember that there isn't a permanent Drag Race set, and it doesn't sit there the whole year round. It goes into storage once filming has wrapped, and then they unpack it the next time they want to film a season. Naysha said she found this out because when she was on All Stars, while they were doing their confessionals, they were taking everything down and were putting it into storage, which is why the queens were, quote, stealing everything. Naysha also added that going back to the weight loss thing, someone's weight loss journey is none of anyone else's business, and even if someone does use something like Ozempic, it's still hard work and they still have to change their life and work hard, so don't discount someone just because they used Ozempic or got weight loss surgery, because it's none of our business, and everyone clapped and cheered. On a related note, I did see something interesting outside of Roscoe's, which was to do with this topic. Shortly after the Drag Race episode came out, Mistress posted on Instagram with 3 photos of her confessionals, as well as some other photos showing her weight loss, which she also talked about in the episode. In the caption on this post, Mistress wrote a lengthy post saying that she lost nearly 200 pounds in a year and a half, and people always speculated that it was surgery or medication, but she said that she logged everything that she ate, and she also went to the gym almost every day. And the truth is that, quote, if you want something, just get off your ass and go do it. And I just thought that this was an interesting bit of information that was relevant to what they were talking about at Roscoe's. Back to Roscoe's, and there was a follow-up question for Lydia, which was, they know that the season 17 lip sync Lollapalooza SmackDown was filmed after Lydia's bracket on All Stars 10 was filmed. So did Lydia have to be careful with anything to not disrupt the timeline, because she was effectively filming 2 shows at the same time? Lydia said not really, but she was just trying to, quote, not pee off anyone, but she was just having fun and it was one of the best times of her life. Cara said they had several of the season 17 top 5 queens at Roscoe's recently, and they said that they didn't know that Lydia was on All Stars 10, but they stopped getting responses from her in the group chat. Lydia joked that she, quote, ghosted everyone, and that included Corey King, and Lydia just, quote, fell off the face of the earth and went to go film All Stars because it was such a short amount of time, and she joked that they wouldn't miss her that badly anyway. There was another VIP question, which was, do you think the era of Great Untucked is over, and if so, why? Cynthia said that this is a new era, and she shared that what you may not know is that in this week's Untucked, Mistress was drunk because she kept stealing other people's House of Love cocktails. And that's why, according to Cynthia, Mistress was acting in a, quote, interesting way. There was another question, which was that Cynthia is famously the sweetest person from Drag Race and she gets on with everyone, but is there a queen that Cynthia does not get on with, and say their names? Cynthia smiled and she asked if she could sing the answer. She then sang Who's Zoomin' Who by Aretha Franklin, which was the lip sync song this week, which was Cynthia versus Mistress. People laughed, but Cynthia said she was joking and she loves Mistress, but she said she's a, quote, hard child and she doesn't listen. Then Cynthia asked if she could spill some tea, and Cynthia shared that after they filmed, she wanted to have a conversation with Mistress. Nowadays on Drag Race, they have a nice area across the street from the studio where the queens can stay. Cynthia went up to Mistress and said, quote, "I need to talk to you," and Mistress apparently replied saying, quote, "Oh, you can talk to me with everybody." So Cynthia then said to Mistress, quote, "Mistress, you know why RuPaul put you on the bottom too? Because she wants you to humble yourself." And people in the audience gasped a bit. Cynthia went on to say, quote, "Listen to this from Tia Cuckoo. I love you. I've been in the business for a long time. Don't mess with your career." And apparently Mistress just said, quote, "Oh, thank you, Cuckoo. I love you." Then Cynthia ended by saying, quote, "You need to see the rest of the season," and people in the audience gasped again. But Cynthia said Mistress gave her a wig for free, and she also has a photo session in Houston, and she said that she does actually love Mistress. People then laughed, and Naysha said she loves how quickly it turned from, quote, "I hate her, but she gave me free stuff." Cynthia then said it's a, quote, love-hate relationship. Cynthia added and said, quote, "When you go to the TV show, don't edit yourself too much, be yourself." And so it sounds like Cynthia potentially confronted Mistress about some behaviour, and it may be something that comes up in a future episode, but we'll have to wait and see. And finally, an audience member asked, what's the biggest difference between filming a regular season of Drag Race and an All-Stars season? Cynthia said a regular season is much longer hours, whereas All-Stars is usually more flexible. For example, on Cynthia's original seasons, which were seasons 8 and 9, it was from 6 AM in the morning until 11 PM at night. Whereas on All-Stars, it was only from 10:30 AM to 7 PM. She also said that on All-Stars, they had time after filming to go to their place and, quote, "smoke a bit of cannabis products and have a little bit of a good time." And people in the audience laughed and cheered. So there you go, there was the Roscoe's recap for All-Stars 10 episode 10. What did you think of this season's Snatch Game? And which queen do you think will be brought back as the wild card? Let me know in the comments. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my latest Patreon member, Nicole, who recently joined in the You're a Winner Baby tier. Nicole, you are a winner baby. If you'd like early access to my videos, access to the exclusive Patreon chat, as well as exclusive content, please consider checking out my Patreon. It just costs a few dollars a month and it really helps support the channel. And I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to all of my new Patreon members, as well as my incredible existing Patreon members. Your support is truly so amazing, and I'm thankful every day to have such an amazing community. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your support more than you know. Please make sure you like and comment on this video to help boost it in the algorithm and promote it to more people. And please make sure you hit that subscribe button if you like this video and want to be notified when I post more videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me in the future for more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. Thank you so much. Bye.